LTD, welcome to the Kriegsspiel Umpiring chat show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's I'm delighted to have you on. I've watched your products and what you've done with great interest. I look forward to hearing some of the thinking behind it.
Thank you. Yes, my products. Yes.
Let's let's what would you call them? Your scenarios.
My
Let's call it that.
scenarios.
Also, but
My
also what you post in terms of your thought process. And so talk
Yeah,
about how you
sure.
found the
Thank you.
IKS and a little bit about your wargaming background.
Sure. So I've always been playing and writing games since childhood. Board games, war
Yeah.
games. One of my good friend's brothers was a huge. He's a huge nerd, and basically he was into hex and counter war games. So I can remember at the
Yeah.
age of 7 being leading panzers into Russia for Operation Barbarossa and stuff like this. Back in the 1980s, it
Nothing,
was good
nothing
fun.
better for a 7-year-old to do than to get a good grounding in
Absolutely.
how to.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was mad for history, mad for games, making my own games, and I eventually made a set of rules for my Lego soldiers to fight against each other. And I was talking to
There you
another
go.
friend one day and said, "Hey, do you want to play my Lego war game?" And he did. Yeah, that's been my whole life is talking people into playing games with me. And after we'd played this battle with our Lego soldiers, he said, "Why don't we just play Warhammer?" And I said, "What's Warhammer?" So that was the next part of my life was playing Warhammer fantasy battles and things like that. And then went to university and I was a member of the Warhounds
Yeah.
Club in Brisbane, which is a miniatures wargaming club, kind of like Little Wars TV club. So this war games club had their own clubhouse. So we used to
Okay.
play massive American Civil War games um, over months and months and multiple tables and huge battles. And I would run these campaigns, and like each battle would impact the next, and we would lay out thousands of miniatures, and we had a
That's
fabulous
great.
time. And so we made up our own American state. I think it was called East Virginia, which was basically the idea that it's an island off the coast of Virginia, and we would fight on this fantasy state in America. And we had these massive games, and that's where I was first called LT. Actually, that's why my name is
Right.
LTD because I was part of that club. One of the guys there decided I looked like LT from the movie Platoon, which I might have done when I was 20. Um, and so my online handle became LT Dave. Now it's just LTD. And then I moved away, finished university, got my gaming moved online after that. But I kept creating games, particularly around different forums and things. So there used to be a web comic called Earthworld, which ran for a few years, and that was the idea of a human being sucked into a fantasy strategy game and playing in this game
Okay. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
real life. And so I used to run games on the forums there, set in that world, set in other worlds. So I'm always making rules up. Um, and then in 2015, I got really into Star Wars Armada, which is sort of plastic starships on a table. And again,
Yeah.
moved to the
Yeah.
forums there and played games through that. So not just Star Wars games, but all kinds of games being played in the background of forums for fan things. So while we'd be arguing about the
Okay.
rules and different stuff in the background, we'd be playing games that we'd invented. And eventually that went to Discord sort of stuff as the forums all got shut down in the
Yeah.
2015,
Yeah.
2017. Yeah, so I joined Discord in 2017. I looked it up today, and then in 2020, I moved to a new city just as the pandemic hit. And so while we were in lockdown, we renovated our shed, and I built myself a gaming room, and then realized I had no one to play games with. So I decided I'd use my models. I'd put my models out on the table and take pictures of them and send them to my friends and say, "What would you do here? What would be the situation?" That turned into a whole set
Really?
of scenarios and stuff. So that was my
Yeah.
pandemic thing. And eventually, I thought I'm going to start. I'll do a campaign like we did in the old days, but I'll do it all online, and it'll be an Austrian Wars of
Right.
Succession game. So Frederick the Great, Maria Theresa, those sort of guys. And so I started planning. I drew up maps. I executed the history and stuff like that. I have a master's degree in history, so I love that sort of stuff. Mostly military
Right.
history is my degree. Um, and then I was looking at this game, thinking this would be something that I would have loved to play when I was 10 or 12. And that just got me in the idea of why don't I just put an M in front of Austria? So instead of Austria, it became Maustria.
Is
And all my campaigns suddenly became set in a world of anthropomorphic mice, which means you can slaughter tens of
right.
thousands of mice and you don't have to feel bad about it, sort of thing.
Now, did the
But
M come first and then the mice, or did the how did that? You literally just put an M in front and said, "Hey, I'll make it about
yeah,
mice."
just
How did
put an
that
M in
work?
front of it and suddenly went, this is a world of mice. Yeah, instead of Austria, it's Maustria. And so my Austrian
That's
Wars of Succession became my Maustrian Wars of Succession.
right.
So yeah, we invented, and then online invented a whole bunch of, so some guys from my older Marta games and other games that I'd played and real life friends, I managed to talk them into playing another game with me during the end of 2020.
Yep.
So I actually looked it up today. I set up the Discord server on the 28th of June, 2020. So that was 5 years
Okay.
ago, a few days ago. And ran that
Yeah.
quite happily and set up a YouTube series because that was part of it as well. While I'm doing this, I'll set up a YouTube to report the events of the battles and what the campaign moves are. So I think in that first game, I would have had 24 or 25 players just playing different nations and fighting the battles. The idea would be that we'd take strategic campaign moves, and then when a big battle would happen, the game would pause. All the players would be given like a core command, or a command on the battlefield. I'd lay out the soldiers on the table. I'd take photos. I'd send them to the players. We played like that.
So
And as part
you
of
independently created a version of what you eventually found in the IKS. I mean, you kind of
Yeah,
came to this
exactly.
conclusion.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. But I'd been doing this for years, and I mean, I've heard on your your podcast before. I think James said he'd never even heard of Kriegsspiel. Well, I'd heard about Kriegsspiel when I was 7,
Right.
but it
Right.
never occurred to me that there were other people in the world doing it. I guess. Um, And so, as part of
Yeah.
this, my YouTube channel, so Jan, the German guy who's part of the
Sure.
IKS,
John
he
Heineman.
joined my
Yeah.
YouTube. He subscribed to my YouTube and he
Is
said,
that
"Can I play in
right?
the next campaign?" He came and played in one of the campaigns, and partway through that, he said, "Why don't you come over and join the IKS and see what's happening there?" And so I looked it up
Sure.
again today, and I joined the IKS on the 30th of June, which 2022, which is 5 years, 3 years ago, 3 years ago exactly today.
Oh, you
So
are one of the
wonderful.
originals. I love that.
I don't know if I'm one of the, it was certainly going before I
I
got
think
there, but yeah,
so.
three
Yeah. I
years ago
think that,
today
and
is, so it's a huge
yeah.
coincidence that you've invited me on your podcast on my 3 year anniversary with the IKS.
Well, it was planned that way. I like to
Yes,
take credit for any sort of accidental planning that comes together.
that's
So
right.
that's great.
So
So you might even have
that's
more
right because,
experience than James.
well, perhaps I'm a little bit older than James, and so I've been playing games longer than him. I certainly haven't played as many games as him, but I've
That's
been
true.
creating games and stuff for many many years.
Oh,
Um,
that's terrific. Okay.
yeah.
And so when just a tremendous amount of activity, your YouTube channel, your Maustrian work, your miniatures. Sounds like you have thousands of miniatures in IKS. How do you balance that? What percentage of your time is IKS versus some of these other great things that you're doing?
Um, well, I'm not. I'm part of the IKS and I'm a master empire and I'm very honored to be a part of it all. I don't do much with the IKS really,
Sure.
because of time zone issues. When you guys are having your open
Yeah.
Saturdays, that's the middle of the night for us Australians,
Right.
and I work Sundays. I'm very active in my church. So it's not a great idea for me to be up from midnight till 5 a.m. before going to church
No.
on a Sunday
No.
morning. So I don't play many games
Right.
live. And I don't even
Yeah.
play many play by post games
Okay.
because I run games. I much prefer to run my own games my own way. So I've certainly learned a lot from the IKS, and I've incorporated a lot more
Yeah.
Kriegspiel into my campaigns since being part of the IKS, and I've learned a lot of things. But yeah, basically, I use the IKS to recruit players for my own little worlds, and people who come across to my games. Yes, either love it or hate it. And if they hate it, I just send them gently back to the IKS. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's the mission of the IKS is actually to propagate this form of gaming together. So
Yes,
if
absolutely.
we all have different versions of it, and so that movement back and forth between it is actually a part of the mission. So
Yeah,
it's not about building a server that does Kriegsspiel off on its own. It's about creating this confederation of locations that you can place. So that's completely within the
absolutely.
what it's
Absolutely.
meant to be. So we can learn a little bit from you because
As an
you've
Australian, I would prefer a federation than a confederation, but that's just me.
all right, it's a federation. We'll take it that way.
Federation
Although
of gamers,
I'm
much
sure
nicer. The
Jan
Union
will
forever.
have
Huzzah, boys.
yeah, that's right. Jan will come in with as our resident political scientist and tell us the pros and cons of each.
Yes.
So talk about this idea. I'm intrigued by putting many miniatures on the table, figures on the table, and taking photos. How did you do that? Just talk us through that.
I put figures on the table and took photos of them.
What did
It's
you use?
not
Your
much.
iPhone?
Initially I used a simple. I don't think maybe it was not. I don't remember. Don't remember the brand. Some kind of smartphone
Yeah, that's
initially.
fine.
Then I got a camera. Someone gave us a camera.
Okay.
And actually, as this became a hobby, my wife suddenly had things she could buy for me, if that makes sense. So, like, it's always hard to
Yeah,
buy gifts for
totally.
a middle aged man.
Yeah.
So she bought me this microphone, this podcasting microphone, so my voiceovers
It's a
sounded nicer. And
I'm
one
having
Christmas, she bought
microphone
me
envy.
some. So sorry,
I'm having microphone envy. You have quite a
microphone
setup
envy.
there. We're on for
And then
the
one
umpires at
Christmas, she
home or
bought me a
listening.
set of
We're on video. So go
she
ahead.
bought me some really nice
Go ahead.
lights, like a studio lights, so I could light up my miniatures nicely and stuff. Because before that, I was mucking around with lights and hanging baking paper over lamps to give a nice diffused effect. And so it's been a thing. And yes, my gaming shed really became a huge thing. So it's a mixture of gym and gaming room and a place for my girls to dance, do their ballet and so on. So, and when I'm in the midst of a huge battle, it becomes a big thing. Do not touch Dad's table. Don't go near it. Don't move a figure. Don't move a little house. Kids, hands off. Don't go in the shed while we're in the midst of the third battle of Milbercaser or something or other.
Right. Do not dance near the Battle of Waterloo.
That's right. That's right. Yes, we're
Got
in the
it.
Fetka Gap. You don't want to
So
go there.
is it a separate building, a shed?
Yeah, I've got a shed in my backyard. Yep. Yep.
You have a wargaming shed.
I'm an Australian, so I have a shed.
Oh, that's fantastic. That
Americans
is
have basements and attics. We have sheds.
I love it. That's fantastic. So you get a on the Kriegsspiel Umpiring bingo card, you get our first umpiring shed.
Well, I imagine there are many others who have sheds. Most British people have a garden shed, whether it's big enough for a thing. But yes, I have a shed. Yes.
That's brilliant. How big? Just what size is it? Just so we can picture it.
It's probably 8 meters by 8 meters. So in feet,
Okay,
that's 24 by 24, and I get the back
that's a
third of it,
shed.
basically. Hmm.
Good for you. And what do you keep tables set up there all the time in that third?
It's not at the moment, but yeah, when I'm in the middle of a big battle or anything like that, yes, it becomes set up, and I get out miniatures. So you said I have thousands of miniatures. I don't really have a big, like, compared to most war gamers. I don't have a big collection of miniatures. I've got
Sure.
enough for a big battle with 6 millimeter Napoleonics. I've got American War of Independence figures in 15 millimeters, and I have
Okay.
Warhammer stuff, but they never go on the table anymore. And some World War II plastic figurines that I've used occasionally for various things. But I
So
don't have a lot
talk
of
us through
things.
your light setup, just for because I have taken pictures of Kriegspiel blocks and have played with different light setups, and I think it's an area that each of the umpires can learn from because we're very I love this idea. I do it myself, not with figures, but with Kriegspiel blocks. So talk about your light setup. How many lights do you have?
I just have two big
Two big
studio
ones.
lights, sort of like
Hmm.
I don't know how to describe it. It's a big sort of black cone with a white face on it, and it just diffuses the lights. And I just move them around as needed. My figures are very small, so I sort of zoom in really close. I just need the light, so I move the lights
Hmm.
around depending on where the action is happening on the field. And then when I want to take a photo, sort of each turn, I'll climb up a ladder. So I'm standing above the table, lean over the table as far as I can with my camera, take a shot from straight down to get the whole picture of it.
Yeah,
So if you look at if folks
brilliant.
were interested, they can look at my YouTube. My YouTube community has pictures of my setup and different things like that. And recently, I've
So
sort of
if the umpires were to go to YouTube and type in a search term to go straight to make sure we get you in the search result, what would we type? Maustrian?
Maustrian Wars of Succession, or just Maustrian Wars,
Okay.
Maustrin Wars,
Maustrian
and
Wars.
that should come up.
Maustrin. Got it.
Yeah. So
Perfect.
Austria
Okay.
with an
Because
M.
we'll all go check out your YouTube. Yeah,
Yeah, please do.
exactly.
And subscribe and send me many,
We'll
many, many things.
brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
So we should all umpires who have listened to this, let's go check
So it's
out that
about
YouTube
60,
channel. That
about
sounds
60, the 60th episode was published just recently, which brought the end to the sixth campaign in the Maustrian world. And we're in the seventh campaign now. So I have two continents basically. One is a European style war called in Masropa,
fantastic.
is the main one, where we have 12 different nations fighting against each other in a sort of red versus blue classic thing, but 12 different nations, all with their own sort of styles of government and history and things. And then we have an American style world, which we call Massacre. and so sort of a Mexico-American sort of world. Um, yeah, and that's sort of a much more American War of Independence style, or Mexican Revolution sort of style battles. It's much more skirmish level. There's only two sides. Actually, this latest campaign, there's three sides because I've given the bandits their own sort of side.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's good fun. I think I've got
Well, I
34
hope there's a
players
big
in the
body of
current campaign.
water just outside it called the Gulf of Mausico, because that's all in the radar.
That hasn't come up actually. No, no, no. We don't rename
Okay.
things
Well,
randomly. Yes,
well, it's kind of in fashion now, so that's
no
brilliant. And so,
comment.
how many regular players do you have?
Um, as I say, this latest campaign, I think I've got 34 players across the three factions. Some of those have
Okay.
been with me from the very beginning. So some have been my online friends and real life friends. One of them is my real life friend that I was playing games with when I was 7. He still hangs around and
Really?
jumps in occasionally and does stuff. So it's good that he's still there. But then some have been there since the very beginning. Since 5 years ago, I've been part of the campaign, and I have different ranks in the background to help me remember who they are. So the guys who are there from the very beginning, I call the old guard, and then because Discord, you can give them different titles. So I've got the old guard, I've got the young guard, I've got people who have come in recently, people who've come in just through YouTube. I give them a special title, so they're not like they're coming new
Yeah.
to these things.
How do you do campaigns and battles? Talk about how you handle the different levels. So, when you're running a campaign, what's happening, and when you're running a specific battle, how do you handle each?
Sure. Okay. So the campaign is a set of rules that I write, and I revise the rule every time. So my rule is simple, simple, simple. So my thing that I say to everybody, every additional rule increases the work of the GM by exponentially. So every like extra
100%.
line you put in a set of rules makes the GM go mad. So my rules have
Yes.
gotten much shorter, much less complex over time. Whether it's to do
That
with
right there
economic
is
system.
that's your umpiring TED talk right there. Every extra
Absolutely,
rule
and
just
I'll
adds
say
to
that till
your
the day I
load.
die. Yes, yes. Every
Right
yeah.
on. That's
And
great
I was
wisdom.
listening to your podcast, your conversation with James, because I'm a huge fan of James, and he was
Yeah.
talking about how he loves simple rules. And then James
Yeah.
comes and plays my games and says, "I love how simple your rules are because my rules are even simpler than his. Like I can do a whole mech warrior battle in one page of A4, basically. These are
That's
the
great.
rules, and keep it as simple as possible because the game is about player. Games are about player interaction. I'm convinced
Yes.
of this. This is my other TED talk. It's about player interaction. It's not interaction with the rules. It's not arguing with the umpire. It's about players' simplicity of rules and saying my idea beats your idea based in the rules.
Yes.
So that's what I'm confident. So yes, in our campaign game, we'll have 12 nations with 2 or 3 or 4 players each. Some of the massive game nations have 12 players, and they all have something to do every turn, whether it's just rolling a dice to do a secret plot or to send an agent somewhere or something.
Hmm.
They'll decide amongst themselves how much money they're going to spend on this or that. Actually, we don't spend money; we spend cheese. That's very important. So
That's
each
great.
city generates a certain amount of cheese a turn, and they spend that on units, and they send them marching off, and then when an interesting battle happens, if it's a boring battle where one side outnumbers the other 4-1 or something, I'll just roll a dice and say this is what happened. But if it's
Yeah.
a close battle or it's going to be an interesting scenario, um, I'll pause the game and say, right, we're going into a tactical phase. Everybody, if you're on this side of the alliance, you're on this army. If you're on that side, not everyone wants to play the tactical game. So I've got players who say, right, just hit me up when the campaign restarts and I'll come back to it. But otherwise, yes, the main players on each side become the army or corps commanders. The others become the division commanders. Um, and then we lay out the troops and they march to contact and we see what happens. Sometimes you have to sort of fudge that to make sure the contact actually happens. So in the
Hmm.
last big battle that we had for our campaign, it looked as though they're going to march around each other for months and never actually get into to that point of actually having a fight. And I thought, well, this campaign really needs to draw to an end. So I don't think I manipulated it much, but I just sort of said, look, this happens. And that normally I would roll a dice to see, does this happen or does it not happen? On this occasion, I went, actually, we need to have a battle. This is going to happen. It's going to happen
Yeah.
here. What happens from
Yes.
then, either side could totally have won. But I just had to say, we need to draw this to a close. We've been doing this for 6 months. At that point, that campaign had been running, and we need to actually run a battle to finish this off.
So you have
So that's how we
32
do it.
players roughly. Do all 16 players on each side play during the campaign phase?
All players have an action they can do every campaign phase. Yes,
Okay.
whether they're commanding an army or not, whether they're just a guy, a bureaucrat, they still get to be a part of it. Whether it's making plots, or sending secret agents, or rolling to increase the amount of cheese in a city. Yeah,
Okay.
so every turn, every player gets to do something of some kind. Even it's just saying, "I train the troops," and then we roll a
Yeah.
dice and add some different numbers and see if it works or not. So yeah, yeah,
Terrific. Okay, great.
uh,
I'm learning as we go. Because I'm just entering this world myself. That's great.
yeah.
Cool. And then, what does it look like at the campaign phase? Do you have a map with area movement, and how do you track? What does it look like to a player during the campaign phase or operations phase?
Well, I've drawn my own maps of Maustria, of Mausropa and
Hmm.
Massacre. And yes, then I've put that into. I used to just have it on a bit of cardboard, and cardboard units would move around. I'd take a photo of that each turn and send that out as a report. But I've recently put that into, well, last 2 years, that goes into TTS now, so that the figures, it's easier to keep track of them. And when the units
Yeah.
fall off the cardboard, it's easier to put them back. Yeah, screenshots of that. So generally, like, the whole side will get a map of their whole country, or at least everything that they can see in their country. It's obviously, um, yeah. How to explain this? They can. I make it that their player can both be in the field with their army, but they're also in the capital, so they can have a political conversation. And I just
Right.
say to them, look, whatever's happening in the field, just keep that separate from what's happening in the capital. So you know that there's been a battle and this has been the outcome, but the person who you are back in the capital doesn't know that yet. So you
Right.
can't reveal in character information in a public chat, sort of thing. And
Yeah.
generally that works. That's a little bit of mind bending for new players, but generally they get the hang of that pretty quick.
Players want the game to work. So if they
That's
understand
right.
the
They
rules,
do.
they'll follow
Yeah.
it. Generally, I
Yeah.
found.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
what we
Yeah.
say. We're selling a story together. It's not about winning and losing. It's about us having a good time over 6 months. And so
Yeah.
some of the players who keep coming back, they keep losing, and they don't care. They really enjoy just being part of this world. Um, I've
That's
got some
great.
players who do these most elaborate grand schemes. So one player who's absolutely convinced that he needs to build a steam engine and build a new railway system. He's inventing all these technology. I'm going, yeah, okay, we'll roll a dice and see what happens. And so this little tiny country off in the corner is obsessed with building steam engines. And whether that ever actually comes into effect, well, in 5 or 10 years, when I'm running the 12th campaign in Mouse Roper, maybe there'll be a steam
Right.
engine. Who knows?
But you'll at least have you'll have plenty of context for your new
That's
steam
right.
engine empire.
Yeah.
How do you keep the story of the campaign on the rails? And the nature of the question is that sometimes players want to go off in different directions, and the steam engine is why I asked the question. It's a great example of taking this story in another direction. How do you kind of keep things without the players feeling like it's artificially constrained?
Um, So it's a sandbox game. Anything can happen, but it's my sandbox. So I
Right.
decide more or less what we're going to do. So if someone wants to build a ladder to the moon, they can totally try and do that. But
Right.
they're going to have to roll a lot of dice. And so my basic system is you roll a six-sided dice, five plus what you're trying to do succeeds. A one is a critical fail. So whatever you can
Okay.
be, have done 10 plots in a row to try and get your rocket to the moon or whatever. But if you roll a one, that thing's blowing up on the landing patch and something terrible happens. So when they try to do stupid and
Right.
elaborate or extraordinary things, there's always that 1 in 6 chance that it just utterly goes terribly wrong. And
Right.
invariably that happens at just the perfect time. I don't manipulate the dice. I roll the dice in front of the players. They see me on the Discord roll the dice. The
Oh,
dice
you
maiden
do.
helps us
Okay.
there. Um, and so they know when they've rolled. Or actually, usually I tell them to roll the dice. Roll the dice, see what happens. And they roll a one, and they just go, that's it's all gone up in smoke. My brilliant scheme to, I don't know, make an alliance with the bats
My
who live in
ladder
the
to the
forest, so I can
moon.
have flying troops. All the rest of it.
My ladder to
Yeah.
the moon slipped off and fell.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Okay.
right. Or they want to send merchants
Oh,
off to the other side of the world to trade cheese with the Mousikins or whatever. Yeah, totally fine. Go for it. Let me know
yeah.
when we get 5 turns down the road. Remind me to tell you how it happened. So nothing's
Yeah.
impossible. But at the same time, I don't. It's a Maustrian Wars of Succession. They shouldn't have tanks and atomic bombs. We're in the 1800s,
Yeah.
1700s equivalent of our technology. We need to sort of keep it in that world. But if somebody says to me, "Hey,
Now,
I
it
want to
sounds like
put
you've rolled.
rockets," sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was
Sorry,
gonna
go
say,
ahead.
if somebody comes and says, I want to learn how to build rockets so that I can have, rocket like the British had during the Napoleonic Wars. I wanted to do that. I'd be totally fine with that. Somebody
Yeah.
says to me, I want to invent a new kind of rifle so that my skirmishers have superior skills. Yep, totally. Let's do that. I want to train my Marines that they can land on the beach from longboats. Yep, totally. Let's do that. That makes complete sense. Um, it won't happen automatically, but yeah, it's easier plots are easier and harder plots are harder. And there's modifiers, and of course they can invest cheese to make their plots more successful and things like this. So there's an
So
economic cost to doing strange things.
you mentioned the players rolling a dice. Are these games are live, or how does that work in terms of live and asynchronous play by
Oh no,
post
these are
style?
all almost all play by post. But just in the
Okay.
Discord server, there's an app called Dice Maiden, and you just
Okay.
type in
Yeah.
/r d6, and she rolls the dice for you. And my players absolutely curse the Dice Maiden. They really think she's got something out for them at times. I've got one guy who can't roll it. He can't roll anything but ones. And even when he says you roll for me, it'll come up a one. So yeah, I don't know that the Dice Maiden does hate
And
some people.
what do you find about players rolling the die and kind of looking behind the curtain with you? Is that what are the player reactions to that, or what's your thoughts on that?
So I guess I'm a board gamer first and foremost. I'm not a role player
Uh-huh.
game. Actually, I'm a war gamer first and foremost. But board games a bit. I'm not. I don't play role. I don't play many role play games. I've never been in Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. So the idea of someone secretly rolling a dice behind a curtain that doesn't appeal to me at all. And I like
Okay.
my players to see that I'm not cheating them. So even when I've done I do my battle reports afterwards, they can go back and check every die roll that I've made for their side to see whether their muskets worked or whether the charge succeeded. Or so when something bizarre happens, like in the last game, I had a guards brigade supported by a regular infantry brigade charging up a hill, fair enough, into an artillery battery on top of the hill. The artillery battery had run out of ammunition, and yet the artillery battery won, and the guards and the other guys chased down the hill because one side rolled a one and the other side rolled a six. And I went,
There you go.
as a 1 in 36 odds that's going to happen. So yes, I like my players to see that I'm not cheating them. I don't. I
Okay.
don't want them to. I want them to see that they had a good fair chance to get this to work.
Yeah.
It's not that the GM is secretly against them.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. Fair enough. Cool. And so, your YouTube channel and then running these games, how do you find producing content like that? And then how do you balance that? I find that very challenging personally to keep on top of all that stuff. Talk through that
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm. It's taken months for the last battle report from the last game to come out. I guess
Hmm.
the YouTube thing happened while we were in the pandemic,
Yep.
and I was limited social interaction. I just moved to a new town, didn't have friends and family, well, family close, but didn't have many friends nearby and things like that. So that was why I spent a lot of time on
Yeah.
the YouTube early on, and I was telling a story just to build up the community. In these recent last 2 years, the battle reports have become it's just become harder and harder to get them done. Less enthusiasm, because that's not the main thing I'm about. I'm about playing the games. My main
Yeah.
obsession is writing rules and playing games and running games. Um, so that's what I do. The YouTube thing was a secondary hobby, a side shoot off that
Okay.
when I have spare time, and I still do it from
So if
time to
you have,
time. No, go ahead.
mhm. Yeah. So if you have a one bucket of time, that's going to go to playing games, not making all this media around it.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm a dad. I'm a pastor. I have a job. I've got a bucket load of kids who go here and there and everywhere. I'm probably the most I've got the most kids I think of everyone on the IKS. So I've got 8 kids.
Okay.
Um,
Eight
so
kids.
8 kids. My wife and
You
I have
have
8 kids.
you have your
Um,
own squad.
I do. And actually, I'm raising them to play board games with me. So there's a classic board
That's
game
brilliant.
called Junta. Some of your listeners will have heard of Junta. It's each player is a family in a South American dictatorship. You really need
Yeah.
7 players to play it. And so this time last year, I got my 6 oldest kids and myself sat around a table and played this beloved board game, and they loved it.
There you go.
So yes, I've built my own board games club so that I can get to play the stupid games that I love to play without having to recruit other people into the mix.
Well,
So yeah,
you're an inspiration. James doesn't have 8 kids. He's got 3.
No,
That's
poor.
all he can play is Scrabble.
That's right. He's a very sad man. Is James? Poor James. Poor James.
You know, that's right. He makes
I've
his
written
kids
down
play
here
a hundred
actually. In many
million
ways, I'm
games.
the anti-James, because James runs hundreds and hundreds of games and
He does.
participates in hundreds and hundreds of games, and I don't. I do run lots of games, but maybe 2 or 3 at a time at the most. And he's what, 7 foot tall or something, and I'm 5'6".
He is a very large fellow. I mean, large
Yes.
in terms of like he's proportional, but he's very tall. Um, he walked into the room at Strategicon, and I took the wind out of me. I saw how big he was.
Yeah, sure.
he's
Well,
it's
I'm not
great,
scared of James. I'm
and
not
he's a
scared
nice
of
guy, so
giants.
it's really funny.
I'm not scared of giants.
So
My name's David. Uh,
there you go. Right. That's right. It's David versus James. So now talk about that. That's an important point. Picking the Maustrian world and focusing on that. Talk through your thinking about like going very deep in one area, one I guess one theme.
um, yeah, it's a good question. Um, I do love all aspects of history, the things about it all. I love it all. I read it all. I'm interested in it all. Um, but at the same, I want to play game. I want to run games that I would have loved to play when I was 12. I guess is what I'm doing. I'm really catering to my
Hmm.
own inner child. So the idea that it can be tough rules and hard and yet creative and yet fun and yet cutesy in that little anthropomorphic mice, I think that appeals to the little boy in me, and I think it appeals to the little kid in my players as well, that they get to make tough and hard decisions, but at the same time we're playing in a world of pretend mice, so we get to make terrible puns about cheese names and all the different international names of cheese, and all our players have all the so for instance the great general, the Count Gudarian, has been our main villain, I guess, for the
Right.
last 4 campaigns in Mouse Roper, the great General Gudarian. And one of my friend from when I was a 7, he came up with that name, the General Gudarian. So
That's
he's
a
the sort
good
of
one.
Napoleon equivalent in our world.
Yeah,
Everyone's
yeah.
terrified of
That's
Gudarian
a good
arriving
one.
on their flank with 30,000 men. Um, and that's why. So I run the game as if it was for me as a 12-year-old back in the 1990s. This is the sort of game I would have loved to be a part of back then. And
That's
and I
great.
do have some young players, but I also have some fairly old players, and we all just sort of make it fun for each other together. I have strict rules on my campaign, so like if there's no swearing, there's no bad language, there's no offensive talk of any kind. The
Yep.
worst insult you can sort of say is, "Oh, may the prophets frown at you," sort of thing. So I make a rule that we don't have religion. All the mice are of the same religion. We never have religious wars. All the mice believe the same
Yep.
things. It just makes it, because as soon as you get into having religious wars and stuff, it just gets nasty. So we just avoid all that. That's my blanket rule. Some mice people are a
Sure.
bit more devout, I guess, in their faith than others, but they all believe the basic same stuff. And the tenets of the mouse religion is, what is it? Eat, pray, cheese. I think are the rules of the mouse religion. So we talk about the prophet, who's sort of a Christ-like figure who represents
Right.
the joys of the cheese. And we just that's as far as we go on that sort of stuff. We argue about politics, so we do have
Yeah.
strongly democratic church, places and strongly monarchical nations, and they argue about that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I've got a guy at the moment, one of the bandits in Mausica, is trying to set up some sort of anarcho-syndicalist communist regime in the wilderness and
Yeah.
inviting everyone to come and join his utopic paradise. We'll see how well that goes. So we do talk about politics and stuff like that, but it's again at that sort of 12-year-old level of fun. Um, if
Yeah.
players swear or are rude, I fine them cheese in game, and if they keep on doing it, I kick them out of the game. I'm just not having that. And that's probably
Yeah.
one of
I
the
think
things.
that's great.
The toughest thing for people to come and join the game is that they join the game, they make a decision, something bad happens, and their automatic response is to swear. And I just sort of say, no, we
Yeah.
don't do that here. You've signed up. This is my
Yeah.
server. This is my house. These are my rules. I wouldn't let my kids swear at the gaming table. I'm not letting you not letting you swear at my fictional internet table either. So I'm pretty strict about that sort of stuff. We don't do torture. We don't do war crimes. Those sorts of things.
Yeah. I think that's
Um,
great. I think if there's anything that you're highlighting here that I think is very valuable for all umpires to hear is that it's your house, it's your rules,
yeah,
and players who are happy to abide for it will have a good time, and players who don't want it have plenty of other places they can go.
that's right. And I do say, look, if you want to behave like that, go on. The games you can be a part of that and do that somewhere else. You don't have to do it here.
There's a lot of places you can go do that stuff. Yep, for
That's right.
sure.
Yep.
So, as an emergent sandbox in what you have created, what has been the most surprising things that players have come up with?
Um, Gee, that's tough to put a finger on something straight away, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, it's the shifting alliances probably is the thing, and
Hmm.
at the same time not shifting alliances, if that makes sense. So like in a lot of games, you sort of backstab somebody to gain an advantage.
Right.
This game, the players who've been there from the beginning and been running the same country from the beginning will make decisions that in the short term are not to their advantage so that they can stick true to the alliances or the friendships that they've built over many decades in our game world. So, for instance, there's a good friendship between our island nation, which is sort of the equivalent of England. Manarth is what it's called in our world, and Crimsonia, which is sort of a revolutionary French country. They really should have nothing in common at all, but the alliance of friendship that's been there has been there for, well, 4 campaigns now. And those guys stick together through thick and thin, and that's even when there's the opportunity to betray and stick the knife in the other guy's back, they won't do it. Uh, Even when I'm saying to them, "Hey, you've got totally a great opportunity here to turn your tables on your friend," they go, "Nope, not doing that. We've made this alliance where it's that
We're going to
um,
stick by it. Yeah.
there's a cultural the game won't allow them to do that if that makes sense. The culture of the game says, no, we're in this together.
Hmm.
We're not going to betray each other. And then there's another little country up the top who sort of switches, swaps backwards and forwards as players take over and control it, and different players come and go. And so the Dunbarans are in everything. They're a tiny little insignificant country, sort of the equivalent of Albania in Europe,
Right.
but they're in everything. They're sending mercenaries here. They're plotting this. They're doing that. They're building steam engines. They're always involved. And so the guys who run Dunbar are yeah, great fun. Yeah, I guess the
Yeah.
strangest thing that happened in the last big campaign was one of the again a little country, sort of an Arab or Turkey sort of equivalent, off in the corner, said they were going to try to learn how to fly. So they started experimenting with rockets and balloons and building ladders to the moon, and then they said we're going to
Right.
capture a bat. And we're going to learn how to fly, and we're going to make this deal with the bats who live in the mountains, and they're going to do all these things. And I'm rolling dice, and they just kept rolling ones, and terrible things kept happening until eventually the bats basically dropped incendiary bombs on all the cities in Mouse Roper and said, "Guys, when we're not part of your
That's
stupid
it.
wars, we're a whole other nation. Just leave us alone. Remember the ancient accords." And so I'm making up all this deep
Right.
lore going back centuries of when the mice and the bats fought their last war and how that worked out. So that's
And do
yeah,
you
it's good
track the
fun.
lore?
Sorry.
Do you track the lore? Do you track lore? Do you have like a historical sense for all the campaigns, and how do you do
Most of the
that?
lore is held in my, and players do say that. When they join the game, how do we get track of the lore of this stuff? I mean, it's all there. You have to talk to the players to find some out, or go back through the archives. A lot of it's just assumed. Some of it's in the videos. Some of it's just stuff that the players in the game know. We just know that that doesn't work, or this has happened in the past, and there's mention of things like in all good books. There's hooks and things going back centuries that we've never uncovered. So there's a thing called the Ferals War. That's how the Maustrians got to power, was through they led the forces of Mouse Roper to victory over the Ferals. Now, who the Ferals are and how that war worked, maybe we'll go there one day. Maybe I'll get out my War Master figures and we'll have a medieval sort of battle against the feral hordes.
There you go.
But
Right.
that maybe one day. Yeah. But I just want to give the impression that this is all that I do. I play lots. We do lots of other games as well. So I
Sure.
have a Galactic Empire sort of sci-fi game that I run. Um, I ran a game recently called A Song of Mice and Fire, which is sort of a Game of Thrones game that went for 4 or 5 months of sort of Game of Thrones. Again, in a world of mice, but Game of Thrones with mice. That was
Okay.
a great game as well. Yeah, yeah.
Now, do you do orders through Discord and have simultaneous turns similar to IKS games?
So yes and no. So our campaign stuff all
Okay.
happens simultaneously. And when I'm doing
Hmm.
a big battle, I'll do, yes, simultaneous order resolution. when I'm running live games on IKS or other places, I do what I call faux simultaneous resolution. Because I'm a war gamer, a board gamer in the past, like the idea that I take a turn, you take a turn, and so backwards and forwards. I actually find that works really well with live games. So what I'll do is
Hmm.
the red team takes their turn, and I resolve it, and then I give the report to the blue team, and then blue team takes their action, and I resolve it, and we go backwards and forwards like that. Now, as far as the red team's concerned, it's all happening simultaneously because they only see their screenshot at
Right.
the beginning of their turn, and then after blue have had their turn, and so it's as if it's being resolved simultaneously, but it's not. And in this way, I find that a small number of empires can run many more players than they otherwise would be. Because if you have to listen to red, then you have to listen to blue, then you have to resolve, then you have to give screenshots and reports to both, you're doing the same number of steps. Whereas if you do red, resolve, red, resolve, blue, resolve, it's much faster and you get a better pace. And what I do is when I'm resolving blue,
That's super interesting.
the red
Yeah.
guys are having a chat. So I usually say to them, go off now and join the voice conversation, give your reports to each other as if you're sending dispatches. So I don't worry about written dispatches in most of my live games. I say, go and join the voice chat all together and talk about what's happening. And when I come back in 5 minutes, I'll say, split up, go back to your old reports, and then we'll do it again. So red gives orders and I resolve, and then red goes and chats while I do blues, screenshots, resolve, and come back again. So it's backwards and forwards like that, and that works really well for me. Yeah, yeah, and so I think I
Is there
can.
anything lost in that? What is anything lost in that from a game mechanic perspective?
I don't think so. There may be. It's never when I ask players afterwards. Did you notice? Did you? So I will say to players after I do a live game, was this game simultaneous? And they'll say
Yeah.
yes, and I'll go no. But from their perspective, it is because it's exactly the same thing. As you get a screenshot, you make a decision, then you wait 10 minutes, you get another screen, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, depending on who's running the game. Then you get another
That is
screenshot, you make a
super
decision. It's
interesting.
exactly the same effect for the
Yeah.
player. It just makes it so much
Because if
easier
you
for the
take
umpire.
if you take a period of time and you think about simultaneous, you're supposed to take screenshots in the same time, but all you're doing is just altering the screenshot a little bit. You're
That's
still
correct.
covering that same period, if you will.
Yes. Yes.
That's super
So
interesting.
the last live game I did with the IKS was the Battle of the Pyramids. I've always loved that. I'd listened to Napoleonic podcast about and got up to eat that bit. And here are these massive hordes of the Mameluke cavalry charging down on the French infantry squares. And so I thought that'd be a really good thing to do in TTS, and I could run that. And I did. I ran it as one umpire. I think I had 8 French and eight. No, I didn't. I did have a helper. I did have two helpers. I apologize to my helpers,
Yeah.
but three umpires, and we ran 16 players, and we got through the whole battle in about 2 hours, real life time, by doing this faux simultaneous resolution backwards and forwards. And so, one situation, the Turks see, not the Turks, the Mamelukes see French infantry in front of them. And they say, charge. And they're good. Okay. Then the next screenshot is of the French getting, the Turks have charged your line, and here's the outcome of that. And then the French respond.
Right.
And then when the guys, the Turks, the Egyptians, the Mamelukes get their next screenshot, it's of the French having formed a square and driven off the cavalry. And so it's that as we charged them, they formed a square while we were charging them. We were beaten back. Blah 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 blah. So you just need to explain that to them, but it makes resolution so much easier because I move this far and they move that far. Well, what happens? We sort of have to wobble backwards until we end up where we actually meet, as opposed to saying no, you just move this far, then we resolve, then they get a screenshot, they move, and it's as if I think it makes sense. I want to encourage people to try it if you haven't. Um, and
You
I think it would even work in
if in every
live
one
games.
of
You're
these,
talking about your live game the other day, and I think it would work really
yeah,
well in live games too, in live in-person games.
right. I'm thinking you've got me thinking now about the mechanics of how that would work because you would go capture. I think that's really intriguing. I think it's. I love any idea that challenges a held assumption that
Yes,
fog of war and friction is what we're about. The
yes,
simultaneity it doesn't really add 10x of realism to the game. Is it really necessary? Is the question.
Yes.
And I think you've
Yes. I mean, it's all a simulation. It's all a simulation. So it's
right.
how do we resolve that?
Super
Yeah.
interesting. Bingo card. Tack. That's the second one now. You have a shed and you come up with the non-simultaneous turn.
Faux simultaneous resolution. Yes. And don't tell them it's not
In
simultaneous
15
till
minutes,
afterwards. And it's
that's
good
brilliant.
because someone will say to me, like the game I played at Christmas time, I did a Harry Potter game online again for the
Hmm.
IKS. So the games I can play live, or I can do stuff have to be on certain times of year when I'm not working the following Sunday, that sort of stuff. So the week after
Right.
Christmas, I could do that. Um, and so we ran a Harry Potter game, and similar sort of thing. He says, "Look, we're gonna run up this tower." So I roll a dice and tell him straight away, "Oh, guy tripped on the way up the tower. You won't make it to the top." And then I go and do the other turn's resolution. Well, that guy already knows that his plan has failed in some way. So you can give instant feedback. I shoot at that guy, roll a dice. Yeah, he hit him. Okay, I'll be back in 2 minutes to tell you what the other guy does. As opposed to saying I shoot at him and then he says I did this and then blah 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 blah, and you end up with these 15 different things that have to interact. And no, just resolve it in the spot and go for it from there. I think it works.
You have me thinking. You have me
Good,
speechless. I love it. I love it.
good,
That's brilliant.
good.
So if now that we've had this world famous podcast, and let's say the word gets out, and there are hundreds and hundreds of players that are interested in joining your games, how would you handle that level of success? How would you channel it?
Hmm. Um, I don't know. I yes, that's not going to happen. So let's not even worry about it. My
Yeah.
wife says to me, "Yeah, I'm all for you going with this YouTube thing. When are the YouTube dollars arriving? When do we get our advertising? When are we going to be millionaires?" And I go, "Well,
I
I've only
tell you,
got
any day
400
now, we're all going to
subscribers. They're
type
not
it
even
in.
paying me for advertising. So things like that.
Right.
We're not even close to Little Wars TV, and I'm sure Little Wars TV doesn't make much money out of their YouTube channel
Yeah.
either. You sort of have to be in the hundreds of 20 to hundreds of thousands of people to get anything out of YouTube.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I so the Song of Mice and Fire, I think I had 52 players, with
Yeah.
myself as the main GM, two assistants. I like to have a European and an American assistant, so there's someone around 24/7. So no matter where in the world you are, you can get some sort of rapid response from the GMs. But I was doing all the resolution for that. The helpers were helping in some ways. So I'm the anti James. James recruits a team of people who do all the work for him, which is why he
Right.
seems so he's so successful, is because he's got a team of minions who do his bidding. I don't have a team of
Right.
minions. Um, so if once it gets to that point, it gets really hard to resolve. Or not resolve it. It's hard to engage with the players when you get too many.
Right.
I was listening to your late podcast you had recently with, is it 60? Talking about having
Yep.
7 or 8 players. And I'm thinking, yeah, that'd be really good. If I could get 8 or 9 guys, maybe 12, who were consistent and were good and knew what was going on, we could have fabulous things. But at the same time, having random people come in and do random stuff is what adds joy to the game as well.
Hmm.
Having this 15-year-old kid from Peru or whatever signing up and saying, "I want to play your game," and his English is not great and he's got these weird ideas, but he's loving it and joins in, and yeah, fabulous. I've got fans around the world who play my games from, yeah, people who, yeah. Anyway, they come up with these wonderful ideas, and it just adds
Yeah.
spice and joy to the game. Yeah. So I don't know.
Well, I
Yes,
asked the
if I
question
become
not
world
because any
famous,
one of us.
so be it.
Yeah, I asked the question not because any one of us are going to become instantly famous or that we're going to have hundreds of people, but it really is about prioritization and the direction that you take it with more activity. So, one way to do it, one way to handle success like that would be to limit the number of players and say, I only offer this for X number of players. Another way would be like James does. What James does is he trains so many people, and that gives him the ability to grow and to handle
Yes.
as much, which I think he's really done a very nice job with that. Even though I
Yes.
tease him on
Yes.
every podcast, I have a huge amount of respect for what he's done.
Yes.
That's the only compliment he gets this week. Next week he'll get another one.
No, I do as
So
well.
we
I
each,
mean, as
yeah,
Australians, we make fun of people we like. We don't make fun of
right,
people we don't like. So I'm quite happy to make fun of
right,
James. He's a great guy.
yes, yeah, absolutely. But I think we all have to. at some point we have to decide our priorities, and I really like the way you think about your games. So I was just thinking about your priorities in terms of, as you continue to provide good games, you're just going to have more success. And where do you take it?
Mm. Um, Yes, I think I've probably had as much success as I'm ever going to have, if that makes sense. What I'm doing now is what I really love to do. I'm really enjoying running the
Yeah,
games. When they wear me out, I say to the guys, look, we need to draw this campaign to a close. I need to take a couple of months. I need to recover. I need to do whatever. I say guys,
yeah,
my boys and girls together. Everyone's a guy in my mind. Anyway,
yeah.
um, this so I do. I burn out. I get tired. I get exhausted. I've got a family. I've got a job. I've got obligations. I'm studying at the moment. So, for instance, this year I made the resolution. My 2025 resolution was I would run one game at a time and I would play in one game at a time. That would be it.
Okay.
So I'm the anti James. I don't play in 100 games at once.
Right,
I've actually broken that rule because the game I joined, I'm still in marching simulator mode. The French still haven't made it to the Rhine. So I joined another
right.
game while I waited. Um, and I said I'll only run one game at a time. Well, it's been about 10 weeks this year that I've managed to do that, and I've started writing the rules for the next game, and I'm planning to launch it the next couple of weeks in a Galactic Empire space game because ideas come into my mind and I have to write them down. I have to review them. And then I have to put them out there and see if it works. I've just
So,
got that
what's the
kind of
idea behind your Galactic Empires game? What's the idea there?
Again, a game's idea going back to the idea. My Galactic Empires games is things take a long time to do in space. Like it light
Hmm.
takes 4 years for a message to reach the nearest star system or whatever, and that should be reflected in how the game operates. So I send my fleet out and I wait 3 turns for it to get there, and then I wait 2 turns for the report to come back to say what it did, and that sort of time lag. The difficulties of that has always fascinated me, and I guess as part of the Kriegsspiel thing, again, in one of your recent podcasts, you're talking to someone about the time delays. Um, I think it was the guy talking about the live game you did. The idea that it would take 10,
Hmm.
10 turns for the dispatch to reach them and 10 turns for it to come back. That's always fascinated me. How do I make a decision now when I don't know what's happening in the star system next over? And seeing players react to that stress. You send a player off to run a little mining colony and he sees an alien ship fly past and he sends a report home. And while he waits for that report to get home and orders to come back to him, he packs up everything onto a boat and flies off to somewhere else and just goes and does something random and completely bizarre. And by the time the guy back on the home base works out what's going on, everything's fallen into chaos. And James has
Right.
been part of my Galactic Empires games, all of them. He's the Hive Queen. He runs the one of the sides called the Hive, sort of this whatever hive mind creatures.
Really?
Well, it's not a hive mind; it's James telling them what to do. But he has enjoyed my games in that regard for all six. He's been in all six of the campaigns I've run with Galactic Empires. I'm working on number 7, and we'll see how that goes. So
You
just
know
to
what we're going to
completely
find out,
cleanse the palate from
Dave?
mice, we're going to stars.
Dave, you know what we're going to find out, that James is not actually a person. He's like a hive mind of,
Hmm.
30
Yeah.
people that are all in
Well,
a
that's how he
facility
trains all
somewhere.
these umpires, isn't it? Yeah.
Right.
They all
That's
they
what we're going to
stare
find.
out they
That's
stare up
going to
at
be
him, this
the
enormous
secret.
giant, and then go, "Oh, Our Majesty, we will." Yes. The only reason I haven't been sucked in is that I'm on the other side of the planet.
Well, that's the issue, right? The rest of us are doomed.
That's right.
Oh
I am
my
a
goodness.
knight of
What advice?
James, which is while we're talking about how great James is, he's got a little group of us on the IKS called the Knights of James. I don't know if you're in
Is that
that,
right?
Paul. But
No,
he's some.
I applied for admission and he refused.
Oh, you can't apply. You can't apply to be a knight of James. It gets thrust upon you.
Oh,
So there's a certain select of us that he's gotten a group of us together who he loves our games or wants us to play in each other's games and do stuff like that. And so it's a real honor to
yeah,
be
I
a
never
part of
heard of
that
this thing.
crew as well.
That shows you where I'm at in the status queue. I've never heard of
Yeah,
this thing.
never. Okay.
It's a club I've
Just
never
and
been.
also
I've
while we're
never
talking
even
about
heard of.
that sort of thing, my very first live game on the IKS was Marshall was the GM, and we were playing on the Battle of Metz, of course.
Yeah,
So I've
yeah.
I've been part of those classic IKS experiences too. Hmm.
Well, the reason Marshall likes the Mets map is that's the only name he can spell.
Yes.
Anyway,
Uh, mm.
so So, what advice would you give to a starting umpire, a new umpire? We have umpires who are newer to the game scene here. What advice would you give?
Do what you love. Do what's going to bring you joy. If it's not bringing you joy, stop doing it, or at least put it on hold until it does bring you joy. Communicate with your players. Make the rules as simple as possible. Um, make it about player interaction, not about interaction with the rules. Um, use the dispatch bot. I love the dispatch bot.
Huh?
Felix Gigington made that app, and it's brilliant. I couldn't run my games without it because the idea that you need players to communicate with each other and just to have a system where you can say, right, put this. I send this dispatch off, and it'll arrive in 3 turns. It's simplest thing in the world, and it just turns up at the right time every time. I absolutely love the
And you use
dispatch
that
bot.
for play by post.
Yes, yes, all the time.
Man, that's another good idea.
The idea that you have to ping an umpire to say I'm sending a dispatch to so and so, what? That's madness. That drives me mad. So, for instance, when James runs his games, I often pop in and say, "Do you want me to set up the dispatch bot for you?" And he goes, "No, no, we'll handle it." And I think, what are you doing? It's just madness. Why get a human brain to do what a computer will do for you automatically? Anyway. So that's my criticism of James. James, use the dispatch
Right,
bot. Stop disparaging our
right.
friend Felix.
That part of his hive mind didn't quite
That's
is
right. Well,
sleeping
maybe
at this
that's what it
point.
is. Maybe he relies on telepathy
Right.
rather than dispatches. So I love the
And,
dispatch bot. I think it's fabulous. And I
and is
eventually
it
one day I
working
want to
okay
get to
now?
running.
I know. Even Felix said there were some problems with it early on. Is it
Oh yeah,
working? It's up to
absolutely.
scratch
Like
now.
everything, but most of that's, well, from my perspective, all of that's been ironed out. It runs smoothly. It
Okay, good.
never forgets anything. It's brilliant. So, for instance, my the Song of Mice and Fire game that I ran, we ran for
Yeah.
63 turns. So each turn was sort of a season, I guess. So maybe it was a month. Anyway, 63 turns, 50 something players, literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dispatches. No problems. Perfect. No
No
worries.
problem.
The other advice I would give is get every player to learn how to use it properly. So I drill into my
Yeah.
players. The first word in every dispatch must be the destination. Must be the destination.
Right.
Not who's coming from, not their title, not whatever. Just one word. I'm sending this message to Gudarian. Then you can write the rest
Right.
of the dispatch. It just makes life so
Right.
much easier, so much clearer. And if you can get every player to have their name starting with a different letter, it just makes it even easier again, because you just, instead of having to hunt through the whole list to find player G, you just press G and up pops Gudarian, and you go, right, send it to Gudarian.
Yeah.
No worries. I love it.
It's these little things that
He's worth
make an
every penny,
umpire
that boy.
worth every penny. As is your first TED talk, of which we've gotten, I think, 3 TED talks out of you today, which is every extra rule you put in there is just going to make more work for you.
It's,
The
yes,
player doesn't
every extra
notice.
rule makes it exponentially more difficult to process.
The
The other thing
player doesn't notice how many
that
rules
I've
you got, right?
that I've noticed recently. My advice to young players is, young umpires, is don't be afraid of AI stuff. Don't be afraid of Chat GPT and that sort of stuff. In my most recent game, I've my massacre, every so often, not every turn, but every couple of turns, I'll get I'll tell Chat GPT, this is what's happened. Write me a short story about it, and I get these, generic narratives. Some of them are hilarious. Some of them are just ridiculous. Some you have to go through and edit some of them, but I put them in there just as flavor text. So for instance, I had a
Mhm.
player, a good player who'd forgotten to send in orders one turn, and pinged him and he hadn't sent in orders. So I said to Chat GPT, write me a short story about this person hanging around in this city and what they did for a month where nothing very much happens. And it's the most beautiful lyrical, like 2,000 words about this guy wandering around and talking to people in cafes and having this conversation and watching the sun sink. And it's wonderful. And I'm just, as I'm reading it, I'm just laughing my head off, because, just this guy he's a really good player. He puts in orders every turn. The one turn he doesn't, I send him a 2,000 word report on what happens when he doesn't send in orders. So, and if I had to sit
That
and type that, I would not be able to do
genius.
it.
That's
So
genius. That's where umpiring reaches. That is where, as an umpire, you crack a joke that only you get. Right? You
yes,
just taking
yeah,
the Mickey out of a player. It's just fantastic.
yeah. And my crew of observers, they're laughing and commenting on it as well and stuff.
That's
And
brilliant.
so, like, even when I have a battle, I'll resolve the battle. I'll write the dice and I'll say, here's what happened in the battle. Write me a story about it, and it writes a good story, and I send that to the
Yeah.
players, and
Yeah.
then I say, right now, write me a newspaper article about that battle, and so a few turns later, the
Right.
newspaper article turns up, and it just makes my life so much easier. So don't be afraid of that stuff. Um, yeah.
I agree. And if you as the umpire are the driver of the story and you're using some of these tools to give you flavor that evokes a response or evokes a mood, then it's brilliant. If you rely on that machine to tell you the story, you're going to go sideways. So
Yes.
you
Yes.
write the story, but it helps you add flavor, right?
And sometimes it invents things. Like
That's
I'll
my
say,
thought.
"This is what happened," and it'll write a story, and at the end it'll say, "This happened," and I go, "That's not what happened. Write it again. Take that bit out.
Right.
This didn't happen," and it fixes it. So yeah. So that's
Yeah, yeah.
my advice. Do what you love. Keep it simple. Player interaction. Don't be afraid of AI. Use the dispatch bot. 5 things.
What a
5 rules
terrific
for
interview, LTD. Thanks so much for coming on. It's been an hour of just absolute enjoyment. I love the way you think, and I look forward to seeing more. And I will go check out all of your Maustrian
Oh,
secession
thank you. Please do. I guess
activities. Brilliant. Thanks so much.
thank you so much. Thank you for your time.